Last few times.
Hi, I'm Danielle, this is Eloy.
Your husband.
He's my husband. And we're just going to share a word with you today that God's put on our heart recently.
Do you want to? No? Okay. So we're going to go into a bit of Galatians. Again, seems to be quite a lot of Galatians happening recently. But more just the context of today's message is more to talk about our history, as in what is the history of Christianity? Where do we come from? And then where and why this word is very relevant today for all of us. So shall we start by going into Galatians? So Danielle's going to read from Galatians 2.
Yes.
And let's see where she goes.
Yeah. So in Galatians 2:12, and we are reading from the Passion Translation. So he enjoyed being with the non-Jewish believers who didn't keep the Jewish customs, eating his meals with them up until the time the Jewish friends of James arrived from Jerusalem. When he saw them, he withdrew from his non-Jewish friends and separated himself from them, acting like an Orthodox Jew, fearing how it would look to them if he ate with the non-Jewish believers. So this is talking about Peter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah? Yep. So I actually just got some really cool revelation from this as well, actually. Quite a relevant one, I would guess, for a lot of people. So that's a letter from Paul, from Paul to Peter.
Sorry, yeah.
Yes, Paul is talking about Peter. So Peter was the apostle that claimed to have loved Jesus the most. He was the same apostle that the yippie apostle.
He was very outspoken.
The apostle that tried to walk on water.
Who decided to rebuke Jesus.
And he decided to rebuke Jesus, and he was the apostle that also disowned Jesus 3 times. And then he had the opportunity to undo those disownings by claiming 3 times he loved Jesus when Jesus came back from the dead. So it's quite cool to see that Paul's rebuking him, and he's rebuking for behavior that actually we see a lot even today. That within Christianity, everyone is, Catholics are right, no, Orthodox are right, no, only my church is right. If you don't go to my church, I'm not going to talk to you because you don't go to my church, which is ridiculous. And it genuinely is a thing which so many churches and so many people about. And if you're watching this and you are a devout Christian, be honest, I can almost guarantee you've done it. Or if you haven't, you then said they're wrong, or this church is wrong. But we see it here in the Bible that Paul is rebuking Peter for doing that same thing. That he will, on one side, hang out with one group of people, and then yet change his image or change his behavior the minute his religious friends came back.
Yeah, because he wanted to fit in. He was trying to please man, which is not how we should live.
No. And actually, Jesus didn't fit in. Let's be honest, if we actually look at a lot of the New Testament, is Jesus just annoying the Jewish people?
A little bit.
He was genuinely at the time he died, the whole Jewish nation had congregated in Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover. So Jews from across the world had come to Jerusalem, and when Pilate presented him and said, "Are you sure you want me to kill your king, the king of the Jews?" the Jews were shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him." So he annoyed all of his people. So, we're called to walk like Jesus, so you're kind of called not to fit in sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's something that a lot of Christians, and we all know, I've certainly done it in the past, but where this message drives from is a message that God's been putting through a lot of churches, God's been putting through us, and we've just seen this unification start to happen across the world.
Yeah, so this message isn't, when we make these videos or when we share something, it's not like we just open our Bible and go, right, today we're going to talk about Revelation 5. That's not what happens. We spend time with God, and we don't seek God for a word. Excuse me. We don't seek God. You're not allowed up there. We don't seek God and be like, hey, God, give me a word to share with people. That's never what happens. We just spend time with God, and this is something that God shared with Eloi, and we sat and meditated on it, and we got an understanding of what it was that we felt we should share.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely a message then for people that actually look at, as it says later on in the New Testament, or maybe it's in the New Testament book, how Paul writes about how we are made to be a body. One is a hand, one is a foot, one is an apostle, one's a prophet, one's a teacher, one serves financially, one serves with ministry. That everyone is made differently to work together. Which means everyone has different personalities, which means that some people, believe it or not, will be aligned towards the religious structure of Catholicism. Because that is the way God made them. Now, we won't go into the idolatry side, but now I'm building relationship with a Catholic priest, and it's the most wonderful experience I've had, to be honest, with any Christian. Any Christian relationship I've had building today.
Thanks, Eli. Appreciate that.
No,
the most wonderful relationship he's ever had with another Christian is with a Catholic priest, and I'm just sitting over here.
No, as in building from a man of Christ point of view, from a man of Christ that's stepping up into a man of Christ. It's been a wonderful experience to talk openly with him about religion, but how actually understanding that from a Catholic point of view, it's just about following Jesus, and they follow Jesus in the way that they were called to follow Jesus.
And actually, Heidi Baker, for those of you who don't know her, I'd really recommend searching her. She had a wonderful vision, I think it was either at the back end of 2019 or the beginning of this year, where she and many other people were holding a fishing net, and they were fishing. So obviously, if you look scripturally, what does that mean? Jesus told people to be fishers of men, so they're talking about the harvest, right? So it's talking about going out and evangelizing people. And she had this vision of her holding a very tiny portion of this huge net, and she looked down the net to see who else was there, and there was other people that she knew, like there was like a Todd White was there, and I mean, I can't think of other people, but she was thinking of like, she was seeing these people there, and then she also saw the Catholic Church there, and she was like, really, God, the Catholic Church? Because again, she had, and we hold ourselves up to this as well, sometimes have this misconception that, no, that denomination won't be included because they've got it wrong, and that denomination won't be included. But God spoke so heavily to us recently, and he was like, you are all my body. Every single one of you. You may believe slightly different things, and you may interpret, and yes, some of you might have it right, some of you might have some things wrong, but you are all my body, and you all love me and are going after me. So you are all in this together. You all need to unify in your love for me rather than separate by your slight not misunderstandings, but sort of differences of opinion.
Well, I'll just say like the main thing there is, especially from my meetings and talks with David so far, it's the key is the love and chase of Jesus. And this is where sometimes religion goes wrong, where they step into idolatry. But the foundation of Catholicism is to walk out the way Jesus walked out. And I think where things then go wrong is when people try and walk out the walks of idols. Well, that's a whole different conversation. As a message as a whole for everyone, that if you are persecuting other Christians, you're cutting off your own foot to spite your face. You're then sinning. It tells you in the Bible not to talk badly about others.
And I mean, it even says in the Bible, I can't remember off the top of my head where it is, but it says like, Jesus said, hey, if they're bringing glory to my name, then, don't let it offend you. So even if you don't agree with everything they're doing, if they're still bringing glory to me, leave it.
Yeah. And if, as a Christian, you then don't hang out with other Christians just because of their church or their slight change in denomination, you're being a what's the word? Heretic. You're being a heretic. That's a big word that I don't really know. You're being one of them people that's ironic. That's what I've got. You're doing it wrong. Yeah. I can't think of the word. You gonna help?
Hypocrite.
Hypocrite. That's the word. You're being a hypocrite. You really are being a hypocrite, because the only time Jesus told us to dust our feet off someone is for the people that rejected the message of Jesus. Mm-hmm. So if you're a Christian and you are under that category, I really heavily recommend you think about it and pray on it, but perhaps look at it's what God's done with me. He said, right, you want to unify, you believe in unification, you want to pray into unification, you want to see a unification revival, start at home, unify your home. Now, you've got beef with the Catholic Church because I was raised a Catholic until I went to Afghanistan in 2007. I was a Catholic, and then I rebuked God, and then when I got to know God, I was like, rah, I was taught wrong. But actually, he said, no, build a relationship with Catholics. You'll see. And he's right. God, as in, surprise, surprise, God is right. God's always right. So it's something that we need to really recommend. And I really encourage for you all, if you're listening to this, to step into building relationship with denominations that you would traditionally not want to talk to or not want to hang out with. And you'll be surprised. Talk to churches you wouldn't talk to.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised. Everyone's just loving on Jesus, but yet the devil is letting you not talk to each other. And by dividing Jesus' body, guess what? The body don't work. Because all you got is a hand flopping around, like in that TV series, the Addams Family, whatever it's called. There was a hand just flopping around doing nothing, and then there's a foot just hopping like this. And there's a head just talking to itself in the corner because the head can't get to where the body is, and the body's just lying there doing nothing like this. It's true, the body of Christ does just lie here doing nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
It really does.
And then from that, like you've rightly said about how we should look at some other belief systems, essentially. We're not saying go into that and start changing your views. We're just saying learn from other people. And in that way, we are called, and it is an expectation that we should learn from our Jewish heritage.
Correct. Because in the end of the day, the whole point of this talk started from how we need to understand that we came from Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
That
and if we,
as Christians, it's very easy for us to go, the Jews got it wrong, how could they reject Jesus? What a bunch of crazy people.
Yeah.
But when you get to the end of the book in Revelation, it says there are Jewish people, and what we are waiting for is the right number of Jewish people to be saved. We're not waiting for us to go, come on God, pray enough that Jesus comes. No, we're waiting for the right amount of Israel to be saved.
Yeah.
Remember that, which means that if we are cussing, for those that don't understand cussing, like cursing or bad-mouthing the Jewish people, you've already been insulting God's chosen people.
Yeah.
Like, do you really want to be cussing on the big guy's favorite people? Yeah. That's a wise thing to do.
Yeah. And it says in the Bible how we're grafted in. So the Jewish people are branches from the root, I guess, or whatever, the tree of Abraham. From the tree of Abraham. And how we as the Gentiles are grafted in. So if that had never existed, if the Jewish people had never existed, there is no faith, there is no religion. So for us to completely neglect that heritage, we're doing ourselves a disjustice because they know more than we do. Like I know sometimes we might not think that, but they know more than we do. And that's something really important. Even going through the Bible, when you look at the Old Testament and the Torah and you look at how it was originally written in the Hebrew, we as, most of us as English speakers, or if we speak a different language, we can't understand that. We don't understand the richness and the context of that. But as the Jewish people, they are able to elaborate on the contexts and the meanings, and they're able to see more accurate messages and pictures and reflections in the Old Testament that we would perhaps miss in the English translations. So definitely being able to learn from them. And we were, privileged recently to take part in online, I don't know, not church service, what would you call it, a Zoom meeting. Yeah. I think it's still available on YouTube. We can share the link if we can find it.
I did see
and it's by a group called the Watchmen, who are essentially Messianic Jews. So a Messianic Jew is a Jewish person by heritage who has accepted Christ. So they are Messianic Jews, not Christians. And it was Messianic Jews that organized it alongside Christians and other believers from different denominations, different backgrounds, all uniting together, thousands of people. And we were blessed. It was during the season of Passover, and we were so blessed by the teachings because there were Jewish rabbis who were sharing in Hebrew, what the Passover was and their customs. They were singing the Psalms in Hebrew, and it was just some of the most beautiful things. So to neglect all of that heritage is just to do ourselves a disjustice.
It's just very interesting. It's in this book somewhere where actually, if you analyze the history of the Israeli nation and how God's hand's always been on that nation as a country, it's arguably the oldest country apart from Egypt. I would guess it's held its consistent name. Egypt was around in the days of Israel, before Israel was formed. So you then look at it this way, that you can follow their history through God. And every time a nation, so the real example I really remember was the British nation. Great Britain, it was great. We owned something like 70% of the world at one point. Now, what was the tipping point? In the 40s or the 30s, Britain still had 70% of the world on, gave Israel back to the Middle East. Within something like 4 years, the full British Empire was gone. And actually, you can follow this history through time, that whichever nation was looking after Israel at the time was actually blessed abundantly. Very interesting to actually look into the Israeli history, just to show that for us Christians, actually, we do need to understand that so much comes from that Jewish heritage.
Right, so rather than us rejecting our roots and separating ourselves from Judaism, we need to include it, incorporate it, and love it.
Absolutely.
Which is bringing us back to that Galatians 2:12. So that whole thing where Peter tried to separate himself from the non-Jewish people. So he was doing it from the reverse perspective, right? He was doing it from someone who used to be a Jew and who received Jesus' message to then be amongst the Gentiles. And he was then with the Gentiles, but he then withdrew from the Gentiles to be with his Jewish people so that people would see him in the right way and perceive him. So as we've already said, a bit of that fleshly sort of image, wanting to maintain a status or an image. Now, if we look at that nowadays, it's actually the reverse. Well, I mean, actually, it's from both sides, because sometimes the Jewish people don't really want to associate with the Christians. But from our side, we see it very much that we disassociate ourselves from the Jewish heritage quite often. That was that dog, sorry.
Yeah,
She's having a nightmare.
Wakey, it's okay.
Sergeant Pablo's coming to check it out. She right, mate? She okay? Yeah, she was okay. Oh, thank you, Pastor Pablo. Yeah, so it's about, it's not about maintaining an image. It's about making sure that we are unified as a body of Christ, whether that means that people look down on us because of what we're doing and because of who we're mingling with, or whether that means people talk bad about us because of who we talk to, who we socialize with. Doesn't matter. We are doing what Jesus asked us to do.
Absolutely.
So how do we do that? How do we learn about our Jewish heritage?
So one of the easiest ways to learn about the Jewish heritage is to, surprisingly, read the Old Testament.
Really? You sure?
It's quite a surprise.
Really?
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Because, believe it or not, but genuinely, this may be hard to believe, but the Old Testament is what's called the Hebrew Bible.
That's true.
Wow. But genuinely, if you then spoke to a Jew, someone who is Jewish, they believe the first 70% of the Bible, and I've done this before, but this here is Jewish, this is Christian. Jewish, Christian.
Well, Christian is all of it.
Well, Christian's all of it. But as in, most Christians will only read the New Testament.
That's true.
So, and arguably they don't even do that. But most Christians will only look at this and say, no, this is old stuff, we don't need to do that, which is why it's called the Old Testament, because they believe it's old. But it does say in here that not a single letter of the law, etc., etc. But the most important thing is you look at what did Jesus do. Jesus knew this inside out. Yeah. The apostles knew this inside out. Paul, the greatest apostle in time, knew this inside out. He was a Pharisee.
Levi. It's from the roots of Levi, wasn't he? He was a priest.
Yeah, he was a Pharisee. He was raised as a Pharisee from the line of, from the Levitical line. And he was what was known as a Pharisee. So one way to think of a Pharisee is a persecutor, an extremely religious person that wanted a religion for authority.
It's like religion and state.
Yeah, religion and state. But basically, he was extremist, shall we say. But they knew the scriptures inside out. Yeah. Now, biggest thing for us as Christians is we go, okay, We believe Jesus was the Son of Man, but how do we know that? We have to look at the Old Testament, which is how the apostles at the time evangelized, for lack of a better word, or brought people to Christianity, because everyone knew the Old Testament, and they had to show that Jesus was the Messiah that was prophesied in the New Testament. Now, for me, easiest one to work on is from Deuteronomy 18, which is the words of Moses. So Deuteronomy 18:14. The nations you will dispose, listen to those who practice sorcery and divination. But as for you, the Lord your God has not permitted you to do so. 15. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from your fellow Israelites. You must listen to him. For this is what you asked of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly, when you said, let us not hear the voice of the Lord our God, nor see this great fire any more, or we will die. The Lord said to me, what they say is good. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their fellow Israelites, and I will put my words in his mouth. He will tell them everything I command him. I myself will call to account anyone who doesn't listen to my words that the prophet speaks in my name. So that's Moses prophesying about Jesus and saying that a prophet like him, aka someone, is going to come and lead them out of the captivity and bondage of sin, and lead them into the new promised land, which is freedom and grace and a new life. So you see it prophesied in the Old Testament. So in order to know where you're going, you do need to know where you've come from.
Right. And I think we were really blessed recently, just another example that I think we wouldn't know if we didn't integrate with and we didn't learn from those of the Jewish heritage. When we were taking part of the Watchman Zoom Passover, we were able to see the actual traditions of how they have been taught from generation down, how to do the Passover, so what are the ceremonies, what are the rituals, which the Bible arguably doesn't tell us in that much detail, whereas they know. So there's singing of specific psalms, singing of specific prayers, and then there's one part, and I'm sure I'm not going to remember it correctly, but there's one part where they take the bread, the unleavened bread, and they put it in the towel, and then they have to hide a part of the bread, and it's broken into 3 pieces, right? And then the Messianic Jewish rabbi was speaking about how that's actually representative of God the Father, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus, and they had to hide one part of the cracker, and then the younger children had to then go and find the cracker, and it was about them finding Jesus. It was all very symbolic, which it's amazing to learn that. Yeah. We would never know that otherwise if we didn't understand from them, because it's not in here.
Yeah, so it's really an important thing to look at, that if you wanted to, delve into God more, you have to look at where God started, and God did start it with the Jewish nation. So it's not a religion or a group of people to cut your nose off with.
Right.
It's a group to study.
Right.
And whether you are Islam, non-believer, Christian, all of those religions started with Judaism. Muhammad started by trying to claim he was the Messiah. That was the start of his ministry. He claimed he was the Messiah, and he went to the Jewish people and he said he was the Messiah.
Yeah.
But they rejected him as the Messiah because he wasn't from the line of King David, which is what the Bible says is going to happen.
Yeah.
So everyone needs to look to the Jewish nation and the Jewish books to understand where God's relationship with man started from. So we're just going to share some resources that we've come across that are really cool, that can help you dig deeper and look at them.
So there's a couple of websites and a few apps as well. So I'm just going to list them, and then we'll talk about what they're good for, and we'll put the links below so you can access directly. So there's
some images and juice for Jesus.
We probably won't put some images because that was such a headache to try and figure out how to do that, I'll be honest. We probably won't.
Still asking for video editors, by the way.
So the website is mygewishlearning.com, jewsforjesus.org, and Shabbat.org. So Shabbat, I just want to make a note that they are not Messianic Jews, they are Judy. Jews. I don't know what else they are. Just pure Jews, Judaic Jews. Judaic Jews.
I'm a Christian. I'm a Christ Christian.
Maybe we can crop this bit out. They are Jews. They don't believe in Christ, that Christ has come yet. But they have some incredible resources, and they understand the Bible in the Old Testament in a way that I think we never will. And they have some fantastic resources. I mean, one of my favorite resources that they have an app. Actually, they have hundreds of apps, but they have one app which is a calendar, and you can download that app for free, and then you can open it. So for example, I'll go ahead and open mine. You can open it and it will give you the day. So today is the 24th of April, 25th of April, and it will tell you what date that is according to the Hebrew calendar. So it's called Ayah, if I'm saying that correctly. Ayah 1, 5,700 the guttural R.
Resh.
Oh, I did it good.
That was pretty good.
5,780. And it tells you like what actually happened in that time period. Well, in that time period, there was the construction of the not on that time period, on this day in years past. So there was the construction of the second temple, and then I don't know what that is, because I can't read what that says.
Passing of Ra Malachem, Bendel of Hodok.
But it gives you details of every event that happened in past. So for example,
one recently which was cool was when the walls of Jericho
that was yesterday. So yesterday was in years past, the same day that the walls of Jericho fell. So we can see more of the Jewish history there and the Jewish heritage, and we can then see how that's relating to today's time and what's going on in today's world and today's society that has been happening in the past. I think recently there was this whole, a lot of Christians were seeing how what we're going through now with COVID-19 is very much similar to sort of Noah's Ark. A lot of Christians recently have been saying how what we're going through now with COVID-19 is very similar to Noah's Ark, exactly. And if you looked with regards to the calendar, it very much aligned with when the timing of Noah's Ark was in years past. So it's very cool to be able to look through that stuff. So the resources that we've shared, if you go on their websites, they have videos, podcasts, they have access to free books, they have access to blog posts where they discuss different themes, different topics. They link you to other resources. They have teachings on the Torah and the Hebrew Bible. They have, on some of them, they take you through actually learning Hebrew. It's very cool. They've got a lot of awesome resources.
Yeah, and it's very cool to see there's one on there called Daily Dose of Hebrew, which I'm learning Hebrew at the minute. And it really makes you understand and appreciate why it's so important to look at the original text, because you really see the complexity of the Hebrew language, which is God's language. It's the language God taught to mankind.
And we've spoken about that briefly before in one of our other videos, so you can go back and check that out if you're interested.
And they post a free 5-minute video every day where it very quickly goes through the Hebrew original texts. And it just helps you appreciate and understand a bit more about the heritage of being a Christian.
Yes.
So,
yeah, we hope that you've learned something from this, and we hope that the message is received and you all walk into life with open hearts, understanding that we are called to unify. We are born of the Abrahamic covenant. So through the adoption of the Spirit of Jesus, we have been adopted into the family of Abraham. So we've been adopted into the Jewish family. Yeah, and we want to challenge you today, whoever is watching this, make a new friend. Go out and make a new friend with someone who believes something different to you. Actually go ahead and reach out to them, and then come back to us if you want to, if you feel comfortable to. Send us a message or comment in this and tell us about how that new relationship and that new friendship blessed you. Like Eloy shared about his new friendship with someone called David and how that's blessing him. So challenge yourself with that.
And you'll be surprised at how much unity can come when you put down your belief system that you're right, and understanding it's not about you being right, but about glorifying Jesus.
Amen.
Amen.